Because I think, and you misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that.
Yes,
you don't know.
No,
The literature said it had all the hallmarks.
The CIA officer drafted it in coordination with the FBI, and John Brennan lied about it. He says, no, we didn't have anything to do with that. It was just the FBI. No. A CIA officer told Congress the CIA wrote it. Busted. We may have to compromise on our normal modalities since we must do this on such a compressed schedule. Why do they have to go so fast? John Brennan, the former CIA director, not happy out there, getting asked some pretty tough questions about his involvement in the Steele dossier, Crossfire Hurricane, Arctic Frost, all of the setup that was happening for years to try to smear Trump and the Republicans, but also the laptop letter and the 51 morons that he was a part of who signed that letter, all now coming to the forefront. And so we've got 3 clips here, one in the DC Metro that we'll come back to, and 2 from an interesting individual called Tom Speciale. And you can see there was a little entourage there at some event. Our friend, the researcher over on X, she's amazing. She was clipping from this. This was a conversation with the CNN director, former CIA director, John Brennan, who was on a bunch of these emails trying to set Trump up, trying to create that fake report for Obama in December 2016 so they could smear Trump on the way in or even coup him out of the presidency if they could create enough momentum about this. But apparently they were over at the Hayden Center, the directors, a conversation on intelligence. Why'd they bring these people out? They have none. They signed letters that are dead wrong or actually just fraudulent. So we've got this from Tom Speciale, and Tom was also over here. He says, after the conference on Thursday, I confronted former CIA Director Brennan. This is Tom A. Speciale, number 2 at Speciale for Virginia. But after the conference on Thursday, he says, I went and confronted CIA Director John Brennan about his signing the 51 intelligence officers memo, idiots, knowing that the Hunter Biden laptop was real and it was not Russian disinformation at all. And we know why they did this. We read through this report. Congress brought in Mike Morrell, and he was former CIA, maybe director and other things. And he said, oh, we wanted Joe Biden to win. So they organized this letter and they raced it through the CIA. And the congressional report said that they worked at CIA buildings. The CIA academic body or whatever that reviews publications approved it. And many of the people who signed it were actually paid contractors at the CIA. So the CIA paid for it. They let them write their little stupid letter in their offices. And Mike Morrell was a contractor who was a part of the CIA. So the list is just ridiculous. The CIA helped to rig it, and they set this up so that they could give Joe Biden a talking point. They sent it over to Anthony Blinken, and then Anthony Blinken thanked them for giving him that little talking point. So as we know, John Brennan was involved in that, 51 former idiots, or just propagandists, fraudsters, and liars. But he got asked a question today, courtesy of Thomas A. Speciale. And let's listen in on this one, because this is what went down with Brennan.
Why wouldn't you remember on the Hunter Biden letter? Why? Because I think, and you misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that.
Yes,
you don't know.
The literature said it had all the hallmarks I believe.
Nicely done. So anytime you can get him fired up that bad, okay, right there, poking him in the chest, boom, assault, arrest that man. And so he's just kidding. Obviously, I'm being a little bit, aggressive with my criminal prosecution here, but he was very upset about that. And he's going to do the same talking point that we've heard from him about 1,000 times on MSNBC, where he says, we never said it was fake. We just said it kind of looked fake to us, or it might be fake, but we never said it was fake. And we go, we know what you did. You were very clear and careful with your language. You were implying so that other people in the media could say, well, the CIA is saying this, might be disinformation. 51 former experts said so. And they all signed it so that they could literally hand deliver it to Joe. And he used it at the debate, and it was a CIA operation. Now he's getting asked about that. Ooh, John. Why are you so mad, John? Just answer the questions. You don't have to assault this nice gentleman multiple times with your disgusting finger right in his chest. He's going to have to throw that suit out, or at least get it dry cleaned a few times. So we know John is not happy about anything that's coming down. And he was also asked about this as well. What a beautiful scene. And a little backstory on this. We remember that Jim Jordan, not long ago, sent a criminal referral over to Pam Bondi. He said, hey, Pam Bondi, you're at the DOJ over here. We got a problem with the deep state. We write to refer significant evidence that John Brennan, that guy we just saw poking everybody, he knowingly made false statements during a transcribed interview when he came in front of Congress back in May 2023. While testifying, he made numerous willfully and intentionally false statements, just like liar Comey, who we're going to talk about in a minute, of material fact that was contradicted by the record established by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the CIA. Now, under 18 U.S. Code Section 1001, a witness commits a crime if you make knowingly and willfully any materially false statement or representation during a congressional investigation. Can't do that. Making false statements before Congress is a crime that undermines the integrity of the committee's constitutional duty to perform oversight. Now, on January 6, 2017, the real insurrection, the CIA, and Obama is still in the office right there. The CIA, Brennan, FBI, Comey, National Security Agency, and others published a declassified version of the ICA, assessing Russian activities and intentions in recent U.S. elections. Now, the document that was fake stated, Russia developed a clear preference for Trump. No, they didn't. And they aspired to help him win. No, they didn't. This conclusion is now known to be false. Liar. It was based in part on the Steele dossier, which was Hillary Clinton campaign propaganda, which was referenced in the ICA main body text and further detailed in a 2-page annex, right? They buried it in an annex, and then they said, we got other intelligence. What intelligence? Can you tell us what it is? Oh, is it Hillary Clinton campaign propaganda? No. Because if they put that in the main body, everyone would know what it is. So they buried it in a classified annex and still use it as a predicate for the rest of their fake report. The Steele dossier was a series of reports with baseless accusations saying that Trump had ties to Russia. It was delivered by the individual called Christopher Steele, and we learned that he was working for Perkins Coie and Fusion GPS. And who hired Perkins Coie? Oh yeah, Hillary Clinton did. In July 2025, the Trump administration declassified numerous documents that show that their main findings from Brennan and Obama and Clapper and the rest of them were false liars, and that the Obama administration and Barack himself knowingly fabricated the findings for the purpose of undermining the Trump administration. Now, the newly declassified evidence also confirms that Brennan, who's now freaked out, falsely testified to the committee. During a transcribed interview back in May 2023, Brennan stated, the CIA was not involved at all with the Steele dossier. Matt Gaetz said to him, shout out to Matt Gaetz, says, all right, so the fact that the DNC was providing financing to the Steele dossier and their development doesn't give you concern that it might be partisan? Doesn't give you concern? Brennan says, again, well, that was happening back in 2016. And I understand how you were able to tie this to my reference to my expertise, but I don't see how that has any relevance to the Hunter Biden laptop now. Gaetz, well, you said that you signed this letter that we now acknowledge Joe Biden misused in a debate to fool the American public because this great Russia expert. So I'm trying to understand your Russia expertise. You said, all the hallmarks of Russian, and you were involved in analyzing this information. So since you can speak so clearly on Russia when it comes to their hallmarks of disinformation, maybe you can answer some questions about the 2017 ICA. He says, no, I was not involved in analyzing the dossier at all. I said the first time I actually saw it, it was after the election, and the CIA was not involved at all with the dossier. Wrong. Yeah, you were. You shoved it in an annex. You can direct that to the FBI's and others. Gaetz, okay, John, were you aware of the FBI's involvement with the dossier? Yes, he says. Well, there's an annex in the ICA, which was classified. Nobody could see it. The intelligence community assessment that the Bureau asked to be included there. Okay, FBI, he's pointing their fingers to them. It was their purview, their area, and not ours. But a report drafted in 2017, now declassified, says Brennan is a liar. According to the report, the ICA included supporting evidence for their false claim that Russia aspired to help Trump. The report directed the reader to go to Annex A for any additional reporting from an FBI source on Russian influence effort. However, Annex A, which was only included in the highest classified version, was a 2-page summary of the Steele dossier, along with some analysis that struggled to imply that some dossier findings might have been corroborated by the intelligence community. The CIA officer who served as the lead author of this ICA told the House, Congress, that he drafted Annex A in, quote, coordination with the FBI. Okay, the CIA officer drafted it in coordination with the FBI, and John Brennan lied about it. He says, no, we didn't have anything to do with that. It was just the FBI. No. A CIA officer told Congress the CIA wrote it. Busted. Ultimately, according to the documents declassified by the Trump administration, the decision to incorporate info from the Steele dossier was jointly made, they said, from the CIA and the FBI, working together like two little peas in a pod. A senior FBI analyst confirmed this fact, telling Congress that after debating for several days whether we should put it in there, upper levels at the FBI, Comey, liar, and CIA, Brennan, liar, decided to put it in. Now, Brennan's assertion that the CIA, quote, was not involved at all can't be reconciled with the facts because it's not true. As the newly declassified documents show, a CIA officer drafted the annex with the summary of the dossier. Brennan made the ultimate decision, along with Comey, to include info from the dossier in the ICA, and as discussed further, Brennan overruled the CIA officers who objected to the inclusion of the material. Little more, saying Brennan testified that the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference in this. Jim Jordan said, "Hey, John, who'd you learn about the Steele dossier from? How'd you learn about the dossier in September?" Brennan: "I received a copy of it from the FBI when they wanted a summary in there, attached to the ICA. This was before we went to Trump Tower and briefed Trump when Comey was going to talk to Trump about the dossier, which again was Clinton campaign propaganda. And the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the dossier in the fake ICA. And so they sent over a copy of the dossier," says Brennan, "to say that this was going to be separate from the rest of that assessment. And that's when the CIA was given formal access to it." Now, this claim, says Jim Jordan, is contradicted by multiple sources that reveal Brennan's support for including the dossier. It was his decision. According to the CIA memo declassified by the Trump admin, when two CIA mission center leaders confronted John, they said, "Hey, John, you got some pretty specific flaws in your document here." Brennan disregarded their concerns, appearing to be more swayed by the dossier's general conformity with existing theories than by legitimate tradecraft concerns. Brennan later formalized his position in writing. He said, quote, "My bottom line is that I believe that the information warrants inclusion in the report." He decided it. Similarly, the House report notes that when senior CIA officers demanded that he remove the dossier, Brennan refused to remove it. When the officers presented evidence of the many flaws in the document, he said, "Yes, but doesn't it ring true?" as he sips his spritzer. Ultimately, Brennan had to order the dossier over the objections of the CIA professionals, and they shoved it in. So now, as the newly declassified docs demonstrate, CIA former Director Brennan eagerly wanted to include this. He documented it in writing. It directly contradicts his testimony that the CIA was very much opposed to having it included, because as the director, he spoke for the agency. Now, Trey Gowdy, also nailed him on one. On May 23rd, Brennan also came in and testified. Russian active measures during 2016. During the hearing, he falsely asserted that the Steele dossier was not used in any way as a basis for the ICA. Although that statement was made beyond the 5-year statute of limitations, it indicated his willingness to lie to Congress. Okay, that's an old one, and it's expired. Now, do you know if the Bureau ever relied on the Steele dossier, part of any court filings, applications, petitions, or pleadings? I have no awareness. Did the CIA rely on it? No. Why not? Well, because we didn't. It wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence information that we had. It was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done. It was not. Yes, it was. And it was shoved in there as an annex, and he knew it. Now, as discussed above, Jim Jordan says, the report and the CIA memo confirmed not only that the Steele dossier was used as a basis for the intelligence assessment that was fake, but that Brennan insisted on its inclusion. This stands in dark contrast to his testimony. He said, "We didn't use it, but he did." So this was a brazen lie. It was an attempt to knowingly and willfully testify falsely and fictitiously to material facts. We therefore make this referral over to you, Pam. It warrants a charge for at least violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1001 and false statements to Congress. Sincerely, Jim Jordan, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee over in the House of Representatives. So we remember that. Now Brennan is being asked about this. We've got 1 minute and 11 seconds of delicious goodness from on the DC Metro, courtesy of Nicholas Bolisi with the watermark here. Here's Brennan in DC walking around. If you've ever been to DC, this is the Metro. He's there just kind of hanging out, waiting for the train. And here is what happens.
I'm just trying to get you to clear it up. If you saw the dossier before the election.
Read my memoir.
I've read excerpts of it, but
Read the rest of it.
are you concerned about a possible indictment coming from DOJ?
Yeah, he is.
What do you think about the situation now?
Come on, John. Look at
Anything
your
you
phone.
can say, sir. Just want to clear the record, give you a chance.
Make a phone call, scroll Twitter. Okay. Was he on Blue Sky?
But did you see it, Steele dossier, or not? That's pretty much the gist of the situation, right?
Where's my train at? Oh, is he on Tinder? Look at that nice woman he just was looking at.
You
What
have
was
nothing
that?
to say, sir, about it?
He's scrolling the news.
All my memoir.
Will you be involved at all in testimony before the Judiciary Committee in the coming weeks or coming months? Could you just maybe tell us what you think
like train.
about
Oh, gosh,
the
thank
direction
God.
of the intelligence community now under Trump?
Perfect. Yeah, that's good, man. That dude wasn't closer to the rail. Otherwise, John Brennan might have done a little house of cards, you know? We don't want that to happen. So he gets on his phone and he just starts scrolling through the news. He says, read my memoir, you know? All right, now, so that is another clip. We've got a little bit more. We had this from the researcher and she clipped this one out. So she thought that, man, they were going to cut this little exchange out from their final publication. But she says they didn't. She says, actually, he said Tulsi Gabbard was the one who was politicizing the intelligence. But here the researcher says, I saw a video earlier of Tom Speciale, the guy over from the Finger Point, this guy right here, who got his chest obliterated by a disgusting deep state hack, says, confronting him about the Russian collusion hoax. And it may have happened again at this little event. You can see they brought all of these morons out for some panel on intelligence. We're going to try not to get dumber listening to these idiots, but here we are.
I want to introduce myself. My name is Tom Speciale. I've been a career intelligence officer for over 20 years, in the military for over 34 years. I recently left the DNI as a senior advisor for Tulsi Gabbard on counterintelligence and security. And in fact, I made many of the suggestions on dismantling some of the things that are being dismantled, and also made some suggestions on improvements, which I'd love to talk to you guys afterwards and get your feedback on, because hopefully it's going to be going to some important desks very shortly. I want to agree completely, Director, with your assessment on Iran being on their heels. We've got to keep them on their heels until they reform. We've got to do that. I disagree on the deep state, only because Trump says it's the deep state. But as we all know, it's really just the entrenched bureaucrats that run the country. I'll get to my question, I will.
Yeah, please.
But I want to establish sort of my bona fides on this question before I ask it, because I really hesitated to put you guys on the spot on this in public, but you're not going to be at the after hours. I got to take my chance now. I was at the DNI when the first ICA was released regarding cyber influence on the 2016 election. Nice. I was there. I was working in the NIM. I read it. I also was involved in setting up the principals committee meeting that took place in December that resulted in President Obama directing a more fulsome, because I understand the difference between a cyber ICA and a total whole of government ICA intelligence collection on Russian involvement or influence in the election. And I noticed immediately in the ICA, the second ICA, because I had access to the classified ICA, that there were statements in that ICA that were not supported with the sourcing that was associated to the ICA, specifically that Putin had directed the action and that that the Russians were actively trying to support President Trump instead of just sow chaos.
To your question.
My question. There was an email that went around from General Clapper to yourself, Comey, etc., that basically said we all got to get on board with this, otherwise it isn't going to work, basically.
Got it. And so we're going to pause there and look at that email because it's a good one. Svetlana Lokova has said this is the email that he's asking about that Brennan is not happy about. Says it proves that Brennan and Clapper conspired to delegitimize President Trump. And here is the email itself. You can see we start at the beginning, and this one's coming from Admiral Michael Rogers, and he sent this one back December 22nd, 2016. Trump is going to get sworn in January 20th in a month, just less than a month from now. And so he sends this from Michael Rogers, an admiral, NSA, DUSA, USN, sends this over to everybody. James Clapper, DNI, John Brennan, the guy on the stage on the right, and James Comey, who's also been indicted for his lies, says, this is our subject, Russian response planning, classification, we're morons. Jim, John, and Jim. Why do they have to classify fake stuff? It's all fake anyways. They say, hey guys, this is from Michael Rogers, who's trying to be an honest person here. He says, hey, Jim, John, and Jim, idiots. I've just returned from a TDY overseas, and I've been updated on the current status of our efforts to manufacture a joint product related to Russian attribution and intent for the DNC and the DCC hacks. Okay, we have to blame the Russians for hacking Hillary and the DNC. Now, I know that this activity is on a fast track. Why? Because Trump's coming in soon, and they don't want him to get control of these agencies, do they? And that folks have been working very hard to put together a product that can be provided to the president, Obama. However, I wanted to reach out to you directly to let you know of some concerns I have with what I'm hearing from my folks. Specifically, Admiral Rogers says, I asked my team if they had sufficient access to the underlying intelligence and sufficient time to review that intelligence. On both points, my team raised concerns. They were clear that at the staff level, folks have been forward-leaning and trying to ensure that we have an opportunity to review and weigh in. But I'm concerned that given the expedited nature of this activity, my folks aren't fully comfortable saying that they have had enough time to review all of the intelligence to be absolutely confident in their assessments. To be clear, I am not saying that we disagree substantively, but I do want to make sure that when we are asked in the future whether we can absolutely absolutely stand behind the paper that we don't have any reason to hesitate because of the process. Admiral Rogers says, now I know that you agree that this is something that we need to be 100% comfortable with before we present it to the president, Obama. We have one chance to get this right, and it's critical that we do so. If the intent is to create an integrated product that is CIA, FBI, NSA, all jointly authored that we can all defend, Rogers says we need a process that allows us to all be comfortable. And I'm concerned we're not there yet. In addition, if the NSA is intended to be a co-author of this product, I personally expect to see even the most sensitive evidence related to the conclusion. Like, I want to see it myself. However, if your intent is to create a CIA only or CIA FBI authored product, then I will stand down on these concerns. Like, if you don't want the director of the NSA and the commander of US Cyber Command, if you don't want me on there, just let me know. You guys can run with your little report. I'll step out. No problem. I would welcome your thoughts on these points and any adjustments we might make to the process to ensure that we have all the necessary level of confidence in the final assessment from Admiral Michael Rogers, NSA Director and Commander Cyber Command. Seems like a pretty reasonable voice in this conversation. And so what do they say back to him after all of that? So we have a response now. James Clapper, DNI, Director of National Intelligence, the same dude who approved the new intelligence assessment via his staff, his assistant. He's like, can you send this email so that I don't send it from my email? She's like, sure. Sends the email per the president's request. We're going to open up a new ICA to go and try to find fault with Trump. So Clapper responds December 22nd. He's firing out a bunch of emails. Guess who gets it? Mike Rogers, the guy we just read from, John Brennan, former CIA director, and James Comey CC'd his person called Stephanie at the DNI. So they respond, okay, hey, Mike, Admiral, John, and Jim. This is James Clapper speaking. I understand your concern. It is essential that we, CIA, NSA, FBI, ODNI, be on the same page and are all supportive of the report in the highest tradition of, quote, that's our story and we're sticking to it. This CIA has provided this to the NIC, the complete draft generated by the ad hoc fusion cell. We will facilitate as much mutual transparency as possible as we complete the report, but more time is not negotiable. We may have to compromise on our normal modalities since we must do this on such a compressed schedule. Why do they have to go so fast? James Clapper, DNI, says, this is one project that has to be a team sport. So Mike, shut your mouth and get on board because we need you on this. We need all of the agencies because they need everybody to come out and say Trump got influenced by the Russians or the Russians stole the election from Hillary, and then to smear him the entire first term once they can't remove him, which is ultimately where this needs to go, and say, can we create enough here? Can we create momentum so that it doesn't get certified? We can say the Russians stole it. It's a coup attempt.